Plants versus Fungi.
Wow.
It's a game show.
Game show.
Can't wait. I feel like I've chosen one of Nat's rightful topics with this, since any like squishy biological matter is fairly her domain.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be fucked.
I'm excited for it.
Plants versus fungi. Plants and fungi go way back. They split off from each other at least 1.5 billion years ago. Most people think that fungi are more closely related to animals than plants are, having split off about 9 million years later. But some very old fungi adjacent structures have been found. So, jury's out, but jury's mostly in.
Would you like to hear my joke?
I'd love to hear it. Go.
Why did the mushroom go to the party?
Why did the mushroom go to the party?
Because he was a fun guy.
Contestants, please!
I love these drawings. I love them so much.
That one on the right-hand side, by the way, is a kind of fungus. It's a horrible drawing. Just do a Google image search for fungi and you'll see what that's based off. Okay. Most expensive. If you were to guess, which would you expect to be more expensive? The most expensive fungus or the most expensive plant?
Fungus.
Plant.
Can you show your working? Nat, why do you think fungus?
Fungi have lots of, like, extreme properties. Like, plants are capable of a lot, but I feel like the really weird shit, the really, really weird shit that you can do, like, really rare things with that, like, that comes along under really, really fucking specific circumstances that are hard to find, that's fungus. That's your fungus.
Jen, you said plants. Have you been convinced?
I'm going to continue to be contrarian here, I think, and just say that people like plants and people don't like fungus.
Mm-hmm. The answer is plants. So this on the left is a kind of fungus. It looks a bit like a caterpillar because it is a caterpillar. This fungus infects a caterpillar, and then the caterpillar, I think, you know, there's like those fungi that infect like ants and then force the ants to climb to the top of the tree.
Ones, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing going on here, but I couldn't find that much information. But
that's so scary.
The caterpillar basically crawls up to the surface and then entirely like becomes fungus, and then this black bit on the end is like a spore that sends off. But as a medicine, they sell at £80,000 per kilo. But the most expensive single plant was a single orchid that sold for £160,000 in 2005.
Because people like plants. They don't like funguses.
Yeah. Well, people love fungi, but they're both a kind of status symbol, I guess. An orchid and a caterpillar.
Yeah.
Round 2. Biggest. So these on the surface look to be fairly small mushroom and a group of trees that are like, you know, they're big, but there's bigger trees.
I do know that the biggest organism on Earth is a fungus.
Well, indeed. So this is a part of the humongous fungus, which is, let me check my notes, 1,000 hectares or 3.4 square miles.
We're not good at like distancey, lengthy things. Area. That's
no.
We're not good at that on this podcast.
That's not what this channel's for. And then on the right-hand side, we have a clonal colony of trees. So they're connected by a root system.
Fuck.
Yeah. So all of these are genetically identical and essentially a single organism.
Wow.
That is 43.6 hectares. I don't have that in square miles, but it's bigger. Round 3. Biggest.
I have to say as well, I didn't know that I knew about like the sort of mycelial networks that the sort of fungus could be this huge branching organism, but I didn't realize that the sort of little flowering mushrooms were part of it, that they were the same thing. It's incredible.
They're the kind of analogous to the fruit of a tree.
Yeah.
So they're the bit that come up to germinate. Truffles are an example of something that, like, it's underground, which would usually make spreading their genes harder because you can't, like, shoot out into the air or something, you know. Yeah. That's why they smell so good, basically. They're just designed to be really, really appealing to animals so that they get picked up and spread around.
Wow. So it really is like a fruit. It wants to be eaten and shaken around everywhere.
Yeah, pretty much.
Awesome.
Round 3 is oldest. Once again, we have the humongous fungus. Any guesses as to how... So, just to give you a little clue, you know that this is 3.4 square miles, and you know that it spreads at a rate of 1 to 3 foot per year. How old would you guess this fungus is?
Many.
Big.
Estimates up to 8,000 years.
Wow.
On the right-hand side, we have a tree called Methuselah, which is 4,852 years old. That's this tree. They counted the rings of this tree, and that's how old this tree is. There's another tree in Israel called Methuselah, and it was grown much more recently, but out of a 2,000-year-old seed. They're, like, reanimated.
Wow.
And in fact, like, they've reanimated a flower from a piece of fruit that was 32,000 years old. Very exciting stuff. But actually, Methuselah is not the oldest plant, and Pando once again strikes again.
Are we going to see these? Are we going to see these two same things every single round?
No. Up to 14,000 years old.
Wow.
The number 80,000 floats around a lot, but there's no real evidence for that, and it would have, like, had to survive a lot of very harsh conditions to be that old. So 14,000 is the maximum likely number.
When you learn about these kinds of things in particular, it's so devastating thinking about, like, deforestation and the sort of digging up of landscapes, because there's these huge, like, absolutely irreplaceable ancient networks that just, like, it's one organism. It's all, like, that's incredible.
This kind of tree doesn't grow very well except where there's, like, no competition. So, for example, seedlings of this tree aren't going to grow in this area because it's already dominated by this one massive plant. They tend to grow where it's all been burnt down. So there's life comes after destruction. Bonus round. Tall fungus. Before plants had colonized land, around 500 billion years ago, 450, 500 billion years ago, there were these, like, 8 meter tall, 1 meter wide structures all over the place. All over the place.
All over the planet, all over the world.
I think planet, but I don't want to say that in case I'm wrong.
Oh, who cares?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it would have been one big continent at that time. I don't know anything.
Pangea.
Exactly. They think that these were fungi. I lied, it wasn't before there were plants. Before there were trees. There were small plants, but nothing half this big. They were relatively primitive in biologist terminology that, as a social scientist, I don't feel particularly comfortable with. Yeah, they think they were fungi, probably. Maybe they were plants. This is a toss-up for plants and fungi. Anyway. Game show, though, has conflict of interest. A scandal called Mycorrhiza. This is... that you can see here.
Wasn't that a song? Mycorrhiza.
This is... I want to tell you about an ex-co-worker of mine who had a very similar name to that song, but I don't want to give away his personal details, so I won't. This is a mushroom that is part of a fungus that kills insects to feed the nutrients to plants. And these kinds of plant-fungus relationships, massive conflicts of interest in this My Dearest Game show, are actually disturbingly prevalent. So these mycorrhiza are a kind of fungus plant network that can increase the root surface area of a plant by up to 700 times to allow plants to absorb nutrients and to allow the fungus access to the carbon that the plant produces.
I hope
up to 90%.
I hope that you would get to this.
Yeah, like 80% of plant families and 100% of trees have this kind of network.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're going to talk about this already, but these
Go.
mycelial networks between plants allow plants to communicate with each other and share information about oncoming threats and share nutrients.
Yeah, there's so much more these plants do than just provide nutrients. They, for one thing, stop pests and bacteria and also protect against like droughts and stuff. And for another thing, they connect up trees of the same species and of different species to allow them to share nutrients, to like protect themselves against disease and climate change and any like threats.
So what you're saying is that mushrooms are kind of like couriers. No, mushrooms are kind of like Ethernet cables.
Oh yeah, it's real fab. Actually, fungi are apparently really smart too. Like, they've done a bunch of experiments where they try to get fungi to navigate a maze and have succeeded.
So what you're saying is we shouldn't be eating plants or animals.
They can navigate a maze.
I think we should just, like, photosynthesize.
Please.
What if we could?
Ooh, this looks like a book I want to read.
It's really a book you want to read. So The Mushroom... So Mushroom at the End of the World, subtitle, On the Possibility of Life in Capitalist Ruins, is a book about this highly prized Matsuke mushroom that grows only in human disturbed forests. It's a book about the global commodity chains associated with this mushroom, but it's also a book about this mushroom that, like rats or foxes, have like benefited from human disturbance and moving narratives away from just like everything's gonna end because capitalism and climate change have destroyed everything, to one of everything changes, and how do things function
This
afterwards.
sounds like exactly what I need.
It's a really, really interesting book. The other interesting book that informed this presentation is a book called Entangled Life that is all about fungi.
Wow. My primary source is normally Wikipedia.
Oh, don't worry, I used a bunch of Wikipedia. The mushroom at the beginning of the world.
Mushroom cloud.
The early plants, and in fact lots of plants, because plants, like there's lots of single-celled plants that don't have root systems. The first plants to colonize land didn't have root systems, and they didn't have root systems for millions of years. But they were able to survive on land because these fungi functioned as their root systems, and because the land had been prepared by like lichen breaking down what was basically hard rock at the time and turning it into soil. And in fact, this process still happens today on new land created by volcanoes. So in the end, it's less of the weakest link and more blind date.
Surprise, surprise! A lot of loving.
Oh, did you ever see her Oxo orange meal?
No.
Cilla Black. There's this video of her, and like one of her childhood treats was like she'd get an Oxo cube, and she'd get an orange, and she'd cut the orange in half, and she'd scrape the Oxo cube onto the orange, smother it onto the orange, and suck the orange.
No.
And there's this video of her
Sounds like the worst.
so sort of like talking about it in such a sort of sensual way. It's amazing. It's amazing.
That, I believe, is the end of my presentation. Any questions?
I've got things to add.
Yeah, I'd love you to.
Stamets, I think, is the guy who's like credited with really like originally discovering these big like mycelial networks and like how fundamental and interconnected they are. And the guy who made the show Hannibal, and also the show the current Star Trek series, is like a huge fan because he keeps referencing Stamets in his shows. And he had like a serial killer in Hannibal who was called Stamets and was killing people and growing fungi out of them, and to sort of connect them up. And also there's a character called Stamets in the new Star Trek Discovery, who
they travel through mushrooms.
Yeah.
They go to an alternate dimension and travel with mushrooms.
Very romantic.
It's not that romantic.
it's like,
it's a bit weird, really.
I feel like it's very much like a drug reference. Like we're all going to be connected by mushrooms.
It's a weird plot point. They travel by a mushroom.
So the trees are bigger. It's 43.6 hectares versus
which is the
100,000
biggest?
hectares.
We need to
No,
know the biggest.
that doesn't make any sense.
We're never doing area on this show again. We're never.
Down.
If you find something that has anything to do with area, don't look at it. Just bin it.
Man.
It's not there. It's not there. It doesn't exist. Things only exist in 2 dimensions.